Welcome to another episode of Croc Talk TV. I am your host, former NFL and AFL defensive back, Eric Crocker. And on today's episode, man, I got a special guest, my guy, Vish. Vish, what up, baby? I don't even think Vish needs an introduction. He's all over 49ers media when it comes to, YouTubing and giving his thoughts. He's blowing up on Twitter. I love everything I'm seeing from you. Man, I'm just happy to be able to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to come on, Croc. I'm really excited for you. This is your first monetized live. You're right on the way to starting to the next, like after Grant, it's going to be you right there in terms of 49ers YouTube. So that's incredible. Congratulations. I'm really happy to
Thanks,
be
man.
on with you.
Yeah. I appreciate it. And obviously today we have a special chat that we're talking about, a little chit chat. We've all heard the comparisons between, Josh Allen, Trey Lance. So today we wanted to get into that. All right. But before we do, I'm going to tweet out this link really quick. So you guys just give me 1 second so I can share this on my Twitter account. All right. Here we go. And there we go. So we're going to talk about Josh Allen and Trey Lance. 49ers actually, they just got their, they just had their rookie minicamp walkthrough today, right? So I don't know if they started practicing, but I think they had a walkthrough today. And Trey Lance, were you able to catch any of Trey Lance's press conference?
No, I haven't watched it yet.
Okay, so
Did you?
I caught. Hey, thanks for the contributions. That was the first ever Croc Talk contributions right there, my guy Raymond Martinez. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate the love, big time, bro. I wasn't able to catch the whole thing. I did catch just a clip. It was about a 15-second clip someone posted, and it was Trey Lance talking about how he got his uniform and how that was cool. But he's past the surreal moment. Now he's like, man, it's work, and I'm ready to get to work. So I like the kid's mindset. Just turned 21, but he acts like a 31-year-old veteran.
Yeah, he always says the right thing. So, I mean, I'm sure if I go back and listen to it, I'll be like, wow, Trey Lance is so impressive because he really is like truly he does stand out different from everybody else. It's like we'll get into it a little bit more here today when we talk about it, but just in terms of demeanor, I think he's got the best quarterback demeanor I've seen for a young guy since Dak Prescott.
So let's talk about that real quick before we get into the comparisons with Josh Allen, if there are any. That's one thing I think that people kind of overlook when it comes to, what it takes to be not just a good, NFL quarterback, but just an NFL player as well. Kind of their demeanor, how they carry themselves, how they handle themselves. That's one thing. Obviously, there are a lot of guys that have a ton of talent in the NFL, but it's like what separates guys, right? Like what separates two guys that have the same amount of talent, but their careers go in different arcs. Obviously, sometimes landing spot has something to do with it, but I do think a big thing that's really overlooked is just the player, the athlete's mindset and their ability to not take no for an answer, their ability to go above and beyond to be successful. And I think that's one thing that that Trey Lance definitely has that is a benefit, to him and why I think the 49ers were really, drawn to him. What do you think about that as far as how Trey Lance carries himself?
I think so too. I think, we talk a lot about Jimmy Garoppolo's play and stuff, but I think the one thing that the Niners are always happy with Jimmy Garoppolo is his kind of his character, just the fact that they never need to worry about him in press conferences. He always says the right thing. His teammates all seem to like him and love him and all those things. And you've been in an NFL locker room, Croc, and I'm sure talent and what you do on the field is the ultimate, but those little things like how you interact with people and just like knowing that the quarterback is just another one of the guys and is coachable and all those things are little things that I feel like make the big difference in the long term because everybody's so talented. Everybody is getting great coaching now. It's now the two people that are getting the great coaching who is, applying that coaching a little bit more. And when it comes to Lance, I really think that that's what kind of puts him over the top. I mean, obviously, I didn't get to interact with Trey Lance. I don't know if you did, but I know you got to interact with some people that have been around Trey Lance. But just anybody talking about Trey Lance throughout the draft process, the first thing they would say is unbelievable kid, unbelievably smart. And so, like, I mean, he's my age, so he's not a kid to me. But like, when people say that and it's over and over and over again, that's when I really buy into it and say, like, wow, like Trey Lance must really, really be very impressive, because there's not a soul that doesn't say anything but glowing words about him.
Yeah, so I was listening to Daniel Jeremiah on the Rich Eisen show, and that was the part that really sold me on Trey Lance, where he was like, hey, I went and had breakfast with him. You know, we were able to kind of sit and talk for about an hour and a half. And he said, I walked away thinking this kid is going to be successful. He's wise beyond his years. And he has something that only a couple people have. And he was like, you know, I saw guys
Russell
like,
Wilson.
he said he didn't mention Russell Wilson, but he mentioned Patrick Mahomes. He said, you know, he saw guys that have this, and he was like Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. And there were guys who were not finished products coming out, right? They needed some
Hmm.
seasoning. They needed some quote unquote developing. They needed improving certain areas, maybe more so than other guys. But he felt like those guys had this something that was going to allow them to be able to improve in the areas they needed to. And what he saw from Trey Lance, and you know, we're talking with him and how he came away with how the guy carries himself. He said, you know what, this guy has that thing, right? And
Right.
now we're going to get into talking about Trey Lance in comparison to Josh Allen when Josh Allen was coming out of college. That's one thing that we've seen consistently, right? Like the comparison between Josh Allen and this kid Trey Lance that's coming from North Dakota State. So real quick, can you kind of talk about some of the comparisons, or before we get in there, let's get into some of these comments real quick. All right. So, you know, we got Gabriel here and he says the glowing remarks on Lance is real. I believe the 49ers taking Lance at 3 was the only way to get him onto the 49ers. Chances are he wouldn't have fallen like Fields or Mac did. What do you think about that?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Because I think whoever the
Yeah.
49ers took at 3, we would have said they wouldn't have fallen. Because I will say this, I was listening to PFT Live like a couple days after the draft, and Chris Sims said he heard from 3 teams that Trey Lance agent Jimmy Sexton, big quarterback agent, was calling teams because he thought if the 49ers didn't take him at 3, he didn't know where he would go.
Right. And that, you know, maybe he didn't, but maybe, you know, I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
if you look at, you know, Justin Fields' agent, he probably didn't know. He probably knew what teams were
right.
interested. You know, he probably didn't see the Bears trading up to, you
Hmm.
know, pick 11 to get him. The Vikings were talking about if he was there at 14, they were going to take him. So, you know, those are things that you kind of never know. But in
Hmm.
comparison, I mean, but to get back on track and talk about, you know, Josh Allen and Trey Lance, right? And we were going to discuss if they have any comparisons, if they don't, if they're far off, maybe where people are taking a little bit more of this because of that. What comparisons when watching their college film did you see?
Okay, so I have to preface this by saying I didn't watch Josh Allen's college film. There's a few games on YouTube. I watched the broadcast, but I did watch Trey Lance's college film, and I'm actually doing a little charting project with Akash that'll be released sometime soon. So I've really been watching his film in depth the last 2, 3 days. And to me, the comparison, I watched 3 games of Josh Allen recently, and to me, the comparison stops at this. They're both big, very athletic, very physically talented guys who played at smaller schools. I don't really see much similarity in their play style. I was one of the people who was kind of out in front of, well, Trey Lance isn't Josh Allen. This isn't apples to apples. Like maybe a couple months before the draft, but I haven't really been able to voice why I don't think they're similar. And I just think they're very different from a play style perspective. I think Trey Lance already in college in 1 year of starting has shown greater command within his offense and better ability to function within his offense than Josh Allen did his 3 years in Wyoming and his first 2 years in Buffalo. I think that Trey Lance functioned better within his offense than Josh Allen did. I think Josh Allen makes more physically gifted plays than anybody I've ever seen. Maybe Mahomes in Texas Tech was the only one, but I don't think Lance is as aggressive. I don't think he makes as many just big time physically gifted plays. And then I think their supporting cast and situations need to be taken into account too. I
Right.
don't think I saw a throw in those 3 games I watched Josh Allen where he wasn't under pressure and it wasn't tightly contested. He was throwing to receivers who had zero separation and he was always under pressure. Trey
Right.
Lance, on the other hand, I've been through 5 games and watched it depthly. There are a few. It takes you about 20 throws before you get into a very tight window throw with pressure in his face. Those two things don't really happen. A lot of his throws are very schemed up play action. The guy's wide open. I don't know who number one is. Number one is like the Devontae Smith of the FCS. He dominates. He is
Hey,
unbelievable.
6'4", over 200 pounds, and they say he runs a 4.3. So definitely
Yeah, I can see the
he's a terrific
4.3.
receiver that should be, somewhat of a good prospect when he's, able to come out into the draft. So
Yeah,
that's
he's
who number one is. Yeah.
Yeah, he's unbelievable. But that was the other thing, and like the thing with Allen that really stood out to me, Croc. I was watching the Colorado State game, and he starts the game 0 for 6. Okay, he finishes the game 10 for 20. They play the game in basically freezing rain, and it's a snowstorm. And he finishes the game 10 for 20. He starts the game 0 for 6, but he has 3 drops. He does have an ugly miss on a little running back flare route that he just lobs over the running back. It's a terrible miss, but he threw 3 pretty ridiculously accurate balls that are very difficult throws that his receivers flat out dropped. Like there was one, Croc. I'm telling you, this is one of the best throws I've ever seen from a college quarterback. This is like 5 minutes into the first time I'm watching Josh Allen. He goes, it's a 2-man concept. They're running play action. He's got an over and he's got a post. He's halfway into throwing the over and he realizes he doesn't want it. And he flips his hip, doesn't reset his feet, doesn't reset his motion, and far hash like basically drives the post about 50 yards, just all arm, flicks it with his wrist. And this is basically overthrown by half a yard. But if he had a receiver like number one goes and gets that ball. So like,
Yeah.
it was an unreal throw. And those things, like, though Trey Lance has this really powerful arm and is this incredible runner, you don't see him doing those kinds of things on a consistent basis. I felt like every Josh Allen throw I saw was like a 20-yard out. He's just drilling it like right on the money into like a 2-foot window and stuff like that. And so I think that in terms of play style, actually the comparison I got to is Dak Prescott. I think he's a more athletic, stronger armed Dak Prescott. I think that like he plays also like Dak Prescott in the sense that he's very good decision maker, very conservative, plays within the offense. But Allen is this kind of run around Brett. It's like watching Brett Favre. A young Brett
Yeah.
Favre is what Josh Allen college was, and that's where I think the comparison is just really rich. I think everybody would like him to be Josh Allen, but play style wise, I don't think they're anywhere close to similar.
Yeah, so me watching him, that was the one thing that kind of jumped out to me as well. When you watch Josh Allen, you see the physical just talent that is just like really hard to pass on. There were ugly throws, there were ugly decisions, there were bad misses, there were all those things. But then there were also, like you said, really driving the ball, these drill throws where he can do things without his feet being set, but be able to drive a ball 50 yards. I saw him throw this, it was like a deep post that he threw like on the money where it was just like 57 yards in the air, easy, and it's just like, let me just flick this 60 plus yards on the money in the end zone. And I'm not saying that, Trey Lance can't do those things. I think it does look different when you talk about just their pure physical capabilities. Now when you start talking about the differences between them, I would say, Trey Lance, while he does have a really good arm, a plus arm, plus strength, it's not Josh Allen's freakish, powerful arm. I think when you start kind of comparing their athleticism, I would say Trey Lance is a much more athletic, fluid athlete, where Josh Allen is
More
athletic
powerful.
enough and he's a big, like powerful guy, shrug guys off. It almost looks like Ben Roethlisberger, and you're young, so I don't know if you remember when Roethlisberger was coming out, but when Roethlisberger was coming out, it kind of looked a little bit like Josh Allen. Like it looked
Really?
somewhat like that. Yeah. He was a little more athletic than I think what you would visualize by watching him right now, when he was coming out of Miami, Ohio. So, and not to say he was that athletic, but I think for that time, he was like very capable, moving style quarterback. And then it just seemed like maybe he got a little lazy and didn't care so much about his physical abilities and was just, I'm just going to throw the ball around. And that's what he's kind of turned into. But when it comes to Josh Allen and Trey Lance, I would say Allen definitely more physical, freaky arm talent. And I think he was asked to kind of utilize that more, where it was just like, hey, you have to drive this throw. You got to run around, move, and flick this ball 50, 60 yards. You have to be a little bit more on point consistently his team, a lot of times it seemed like was not the better of the two teams on the field at that time. There were some games where I'm just like, gosh, he's consistently under duress. I like what you said about Brett Favre, and I know most people won't make that comparison, but I think that is actually a better comparison when it comes to Josh Allen, just as far as somebody who plays, a little looser. And that was one thing you could see that he was, and I said this before we hit record. You could see that Josh Allen was really comfortable just being a drop back passer. Now,
Mm-hmm.
he was sped up a little bit because of the pass rush, that was coming at him. So he was forced to really do a whole lot more. But I thought when you just looked at him as a passer, pure passer in the sense of being able to move around, comfortable as a drop back passer, driving throws, making all the throws on the field. When it comes to Trey Lance, I really like the Dak Prescott comparison because he isn't necessarily someone who, and when we say Dak Prescott with a little bit more powerful arm, which Dak Prescott doesn't have a bad arm, but I think Trey Lance's arm is a little bit better. Athletic wise, Trey Lance much better athletically, although Dak Prescott is not a bad athlete. But I think what we'll probably see a little bit more from Trey Lance as a rookie will be more of what we saw from Dak Prescott, someone who leaned a little bit more on the run game, made the throws when he was asked to.
Right.
I think he'll be more a part of the run game. Talking about Trey Lance, I think he'll be more a part of the run game for the 49ers. But I do think I agree with you in the sense of when it comes to comparing Josh Allen, Trey Lance, it really kind of stops after big, mobile quarterbacks who had a tendency to be a little bit inaccurate. And I think there are reasons for why they're inaccurate. Some of it's the same. Some of it could be a little bit different.
Right. And I would say Josh Allen has more ugly misses than Trey Lance. But then again, with Josh Allen, the difficult thing I have, obviously we have confirmation bias of knowing what he was last year, which was a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. But looking back, it's like I'm trying to understand why people ripped him so much because every throw is under pressure. And there's very few easy throws for Josh Allen too.
I'll tell you why. Because it's really hard for people to use context, for one. It's really hard for people to use context. And then for two, a lot of people struggle with projecting. They want to look at what somebody is now. Even with Trey Lance, right? Every film that we're going off of when it comes to Trey Lance, we're looking at Trey Lance, a 19-year-old redshirt freshman.
Right.
And what Trey Lance was as a 19-year-old freshman, those are in whatever issues he had, people are pointing to those things as to who Trey Lance is now and what he's going to struggle with in the NFL. When really it's, Kyle Shanahan says it all the time, you're either getting better or you're getting worse. And with his mindset, you would assume that he's going to get better. So you would think that, okay, maybe he struggled with these type of issues or whatever. As a 19-year-old kid, you have to be able to project how he's going to improve going forward, and he's going to improve on those things. People have a hard time looking at that. So when it comes to Josh Allen and what you're saying with what people were kind of, what they were gleaming, very inaccurate. I was one of those people like, gosh, dang, this dude is just so inaccurate. I watched him against Oregon live, and I'm just like, it's trash. Like, why does anybody like him?
Yeah.
But I wasn't looking at it in the sense of what he could be. I was looking at it from what he was at that very moment. And I think that's where a lot of people mess up, not just with quarterbacks, but I think with all players in general when they're coming out. They're looking at who this guy is right now. And it's like, nah, man, does he have the ability? And if he does, you have to trust that he's that person that's going to take his game to the next level, and you are someone who can put him in position to do those things.
Prague, I have a question for you. Because I think that when people, and here's where I kind of been getting at the more and more, because like I watched Trey Lance obviously before the draft and everything, but the way I'm watching him now is like even more because I'm watching like every throw like 4 or 5 times so I can do the charting. But my big takeaway, especially when you have the frame of reference of going back and watching Josh Allen, really appreciate it, Daniel, thank you. When you have the reference of going back and watching Josh Allen, is that when people say Trey Lance has this limitless ceiling when they look at his physical tools, I think the one thing people don't take into account is just like your natural aggression and play style wise. Like, I think Trey Lance is naturally a little more like, he is very physically gifted, but he doesn't naturally just make these physically gifted plays every other play. You know what I mean? Justin Fields was actually more of this quarterback where I feel like maybe if you stack good plays to bad plays, Fields had more bad plays than Lance. But Fields also had these Josh Allen moments, right? Where it's just raw physical ability that he just uses and makes these incredible plays. Lance, even though he's every bit as physically gifted, I would say there's less of those where I just go, oh man, there was a free rusher. And, Josh Allen, there was a play I saw, there was a free rusher. He stiff arms, throws the free rusher to the ground, rolls out to his right, and throws an absolute 20-yard laser across his body into a tight end who's like very well covered, and the tight end just drops it. He basically put it in the one spot he could get it. I feel like you see less of those things from Trey Lance, which is where I ask, because I think that's the part of ceiling, that people don't take into account. Like, look at Derek Carr. Derek Carr has a really live arm. Derek Carr is athletic. Derek Carr has everything to be a top 6-7 quarterback in the NFL. But he's also a little more naturally conservative player where he checks the ball down a lot. Now, that might be because of their offense, but he also does it where somebody who has similar physical talent to him might run around and make a few more plays, because that's just naturally what they do. And that's why there's a little bit of a difference between Derek Carr and that player. So, I mean, I've gone around it, but my question is, do you think that there's a play style element that has to do with, like, it's more than physical gifts? I feel like that play style element on when you're projecting how good a guy can be is something we never take into account in terms of, like, yeah, Lance has all these physically gifted tools, but he's better suited to be like a quarterback for the 49ers that executes really well rather than to just be Josh Allen where you go through 11 personnel, 3 receivers, drop back every time and just make play after play after play to win us the game.
I think that the tough thing is we weren't able to see more of Trey Lance, right? Like, again, because we're looking at freshman
Right.
Trey Lance, and how comfortable was he in or confident in his ability to make those off script plays, right? So maybe in his head it was like, okay, execute, and he did a great job of doing that, But it's hard to say, it's like anything, right? Like you maybe a math problem, right? Like, and it's like, okay, you learn how to do this math problem and you can get up on the board and it's like, okay, I do it. Okay, is that right? Okay, okay, I did it right. But then the more confident you get, the more you do those things, you can walk up to the board and be like, teach everybody else, like, hey, this is how you do it. And there's just a different level of confidence with it. And I think that's what we're seeing, as far as, in comparison to Josh Allen, who was, a 3-year starter at Wyoming, in comparison to, Trey Lance, who was a 1-year redshirt freshman starter, just that comfortability in, making those plays. Look at guys like Justin Herbert, right? Herbert, his, the year before, junior year or whatever at LSU, nobody would have talked about him. Like, it was, I mean, Burrow. Did I say Herbert? I mean, Burrow.
Yeah, you said Herbert. Yeah.
Oh, my bad. Burrow at LSU. I watched him as a junior. You would have never even thought he would be anything like really in the NFL. But you see how comfortable he got in his ability, in his trust in himself, his trust in his ability, and then his trust in the players around him, and what that turned into in his last year. He turned into, Tony Romo, where he's throwing the ball and giving guys chances and fitting into these tight places. He just played much looser. And I think that's what we saw with Trey Lance. There was just a little bit of not tightness in his movement skills, but tightness in his okay, I'm going to squeeze this in there, right? Like, I'm going to take this chance. I'm going to take this risk. Right. I think a lot of that comes with time and, that comes with confidence in yourself. And maybe we would have seen more of that. I know people might look at that one game this year. I don't look too much into that. That was a game. That was basically a throwaway game. But if we would have seen him for a full year this year, I would assume that maybe, and again, I don't know, but maybe some of the things that you're looking to see as far as like the pure rawness in his ability, maybe we would have seen those things as this year progressed, but obviously he didn't get to play. So I think even as a rookie, we're still more likely to see what he looked like as a redshirt freshman. Execute, put yourself in, positions to win. Kyle's going to put him in positions to win. But I would assume by year 3 of Trey Lance as a starter, I think you would start to see, because now, I mean, year 3 of Trey Lance as a starter is that's at that point, he'll have just as much game starting experience as Josh Allen did heading into the NFL, So now I think at that point, you'll probably start to see a more free flowing, let my ability just kind of go. And I think that's when we'll start to see the best of Trey Lance. Still will be somebody who, again, you've talked about his ability to execute. I think he'll still be that guy. I think going forward, we might see a better version of him. What do you think about that? And that's part of the thing where I talk about like kind of seeing these guys with projection. What do you think
Right.
about that?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And honestly, he's in a place where even if he never becomes this crazy guy in terms of playing off schedule football and all of that, it doesn't matter. As long as he just continues to execute and do those things really well, he's going to look really, really good. The one thing I wanted to add also, Croc, because I feel like it sounds like we're just talking like so positively about Wyoming Josh Allen. There are a few things Trey Lance is better than Wyoming Josh Allen. Wyoming Josh Allen was a reckless football player. He was so reckless. He was reckless in terms of how he ran. Like Croc, every single time this dude ran, he was trying to run people over like he's Derrick Henry. Like I don't know how many hits that he took probably in college itself that I went, whoa, whoa, both of those guys are going to be feeling it. He got into some collisions. I don't know how many times where he would see the free rusher, but he would bait the free rusher into coming into him because he thought he could just throw him aside or juke him out and stuff
Yeah.
like that instead of getting the ball on time. There were decisions where you would go, whoa, you really believe in your arm. There was a lot of stuff like that. And I just watched 3 games. And in those 3 games, I felt like I saw that. Trey Lance, on the other hand, is just naturally, I would say, again, he's a better executor. He plays within the offense better than Josh Allen did at Wyoming. Now, maybe Josh Allen played better within the offense than I'm giving him credit for just because I didn't watch the All 22. I only watched the broadcast view. But I felt like Josh Allen would run himself out of plays sometimes too quickly. He would see a little bit of pressure. Instead of stepping up out of the pocket, he was out the gate and just trying to make a ridiculous physical play, while Trey Lance would step up in the pocket and do what he's supposed to. I think he's better at playing within an offense than Josh Allen. And I would say, actually, like, their accuracy issues are different. Like, that's what I wanted to touch on. I feel like Trey Lance is more consistently accurate than Josh Allen was coming out of college. I think Trey Lance has more placement issues than Josh Allen did coming out of college. When Josh Allen was accurate, it was the perfect throw. It was just sometimes when he missed, it was like, how did you miss that bad a
Yeah.
throw like that? Trey Lance, on the other hand, for the most part, he kind of gets it to the right area. It's just, oh, this ball was a little behind, or this ball was a little underthrown, or this ball, was a little in front of the receiver. I feel like with Trey Lance, it's more placement than it is consistent accuracy. But with Allen, he was a really accurate quarterback when he was accurate, and he was a really inaccurate quarterback when he was inaccurate.
Yeah. Nah, I can definitely see that. I see Gustavo here. He says Lance takes the check down. And I'd say that's one thing I was, impressed with. Again, there was a lot of safe play when it came to Trey Lance and his film, as a 19-year-old, redshirt freshman. But I would say I was impressed with his ability to kind of go through a read, look here, and then hit his check down and be really quick with that. I think that's one of the things that some people had an issue with when it came to Justin Fields, really not kind of filtering through his or processing through his reads as quickly, and then maybe taking too many sacks, where you did see a guy like Trey Lance be able to kind of move through 1, 2, 3, check down, and the ball, kind of get out of his hands really quickly. That's one thing that I didn't really see a whole lot from Josh Allen. I actually wish I would have seen him be a little bit smarter with the ball sometimes instead of trying to just make the play every time. But again, sometimes it's a little tough when you are someone who everybody has to count on you to be the guy. And that's what when I start talking about these guys and their kind of their abilities, right? You look at Zach Wilson in comparison to Drew Lock, right? I went on Twitter and I asked, hey, I was watching Drew Lock. I want to say it was week 17 against the Raiders. And I'm watching this game on NFL Network. I had never really just focused on Drew Lock. And I'm watching the game. I'm like, damn, this kind of looks like Zach Wilson. So I went to Twitter and I asked, hey, what's the difference between Drew Lock and Zach Wilson? And the overwhelming response that I got was that Drew Lock or Zach Wilson was better with accuracy and decision making. And one thing, and they're like, well, he was better in college at that. He's better, and he's going to be better at the NFL level than that. And I think what people are missing a little bit sometimes is what are the circumstances, right?
Right.
When you watch a lot of, and I'm not saying that they're not right, but I'm just saying there's a big difference between being at Missouri, who's kind of a bottom feeding program in the SEC, and you have to
Mm-hmm.
play against Alabama, and you're playing against LSU and Auburn and these teams that are just destroying your offensive line. You have to be quicker with your decision making. Your receivers are not nearly as talented as the cornerbacks that they're going up against. It makes life tough. And then you go from that situation to the NFL, where the playing field is even a lot more level for the most part, right? In comparison to Zach Wilson, who played at BYU, was really up and down the first 2 years, has a miraculous junior year. But when you watch a lot of the teams that they played against, BYU was by far the better team. And you could tell that Zach Wilson was much more comfortable with his guys just going out and, hey, my guy's going to make a play. I'm just going to throw this ball up, jump ball and stuff like that. I think sometimes people have a hard time taking those type of things into, consideration. So when you talk about, Josh Allen and his situation, I love how you talked about how he went 10 for 20 in the game, but he made some amazing throws that were dropped, right? Those are things that some people don't really take into consideration too much when they're talking about these quarterbacks coming out. They look at these numbers so much. Well, look at his completion percentage. A lot of that has to do with what they're asked to do. I hear Mac Jones and his 77 completion percentage thrown around so much, and I'm not saying that Mac Jones is not accurate. I'm saying they're saying Mac Jones is accurate because he's 77% passer. I'm
No,
like, well,
no,
he
right.
got almost 600 yards off of screens alone. He got 600
Right.
yards off of almost screens alone. And so it's like, that's going to, how many completions is that? That could be like 100 completions, right? That's going to boost your completion percentage, maybe 10 points, to where now
Right.
you're really, his accuracy is really more comparable to a Justin Fields or a Trey Lance in the sense of them being 67% passers. But it's not going to look that way because, one, you have the better talent on the field, and two, you have more time to throw, and three, you're throwing more checkdowns.
Right. Right. And the other thing, Croc, you talked about this. I remember you and I were having a conversation about a month before the draft, and you were talking about how much receivers help placement too in terms of accuracy. And like when you're throwing to Devontae Smith and you're throwing to a spot, Devontae Smith might make that ball look more accurate because he kind of knows where the ball is and he knows how to kind of shape his route and make sure that he gets to that spot, to make the ball look more accurate. And so guys like Waddle, and if you're throwing a deep ball to Waddle, Waddle's running under just about anything. Like you can put it like the Josh Allen ball I talked about, that was half yard overthrown, that random
Yeah.
Wyoming wide receiver. If he throws that ball to Jalen Waddle, well, it's a 70-yard touchdown. And now you're like, wait, wow, what a throw by Josh Allen, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. And I think we saw a little bit of that actually this year with Josh Allen. Like, yeah, he improved dramatically, but Stephon Diggs is the first, like I would say, real number one receiver he might have played in with since like middle school, because he didn't have one at Wyoming, and he did have one guy who had great stats his junior year before his senior year, like in the 2016 year, but I didn't watch that guy enough to tell you if he's like making a Stephon Diggs type impact, but definitely he didn't have one his final year at Wyoming, and he didn't have one his first 2 years in Buffalo. And I think that makes a massive difference too, like in terms of accuracy. And you brought up that point, and I think that's important too. And even for Trey Lance, because like outside of number one, the rest of the NDSU receivers do leave some to be desired, especially at the catch point, and they do drop a few passes that the placement is just off slightly. You can put that on Trey Lance, but you still got to go catch that ball. And yeah.
So real quick, someone asked, is Croc in Arkansas? I see the state flag in the background. Yes, I am in Arkansas. I've moved to Arkansas a year ago. Finished getting my degree. My wife is she's in the 1 year LPN to RM program. So we're doing that. Then now I train. This is the gym. I run this whole thing and I train athletes here. We're actually in the process of building a 12,000 square foot gym. So that's going to be great. Can't wait for that to be up. That should be up by the end of this summer. So Croc is probably not going back to Stockton or California to move anytime soon, but I definitely visit all the time. I'll be back in California at the end of this month. When it comes to guys kind of helping out and real quick, if you guys aren't already, make sure you guys subscribe to the YouTube channel. All right, make sure you guys subscribe to the YouTube channel. We got Vish. He has his YouTube channel. I'll be sure to put the his link in the description. It's not in there now, but if you guys check back after this broadcast, the link to his YouTube channel will be in the description. Vish, if you want, you can actually put it in the comments so people know how to reach you and whatnot. Obviously, I've been monetized now, so super chats are accepted. They are accepted. I'm really excited about that. That's going to be, really cool. Continue to grow this whole platform and everything. But to get back to what we were kind of talking about as far as how weapons help guys out. And I think this goes for both Trey Lance and Josh Allen, right? We're talking about the comparison between the two guys, maybe what they have, what they didn't have from an athletic standpoint, from an ability standpoint. I think when you start looking at the talent that's surrounding them, North Dakota State, we're the big dogs in the FCS, but they are more of a power run team. That's what they've been. As far as their receivers go, they have some talent. I like number one. I actually have a kid that I trained that for a few years when he was in high school. He played against them a couple of weeks ago. He played against North Dakota State, and I asked him, "Hey, how is number one? He's supposed to be a big dog." And his response was, "He was hella average." So that's kind of how people are kind of viewing some of their prospects when you look at guys like Mac Jones and people, and I hate that I keep bringing up Mac Jones. I like Mac Jones, and we don't have to talk about him a whole lot anymore. He's on New England Patriots. I think he's going to do well. But when you start talking about why it matters about the receivers that they have, I was listening to Brian Peacock, Locked On 49ers. I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys listen to Peacock on Locked On 49ers, and he had Benjamin Solak on. And it was a great episode. If any of you guys have some time, you guys have an hour, or not even an hour, about 30, 40 minutes to spare, go back. It was right before the draft. Benjamin Solak was on. And one thing that he talked about is, and I've never even thought about this, as much stuff as I think about when it comes to, the receiver position and quarterbacks and just football in general. I never thought about this. But Solak said, when the ball comes out of the quarterback's hand, when the ball comes out, we don't know if it's an accurate pass or not. A lot of times we judge a pass if it's accurate or not based on, where it is on the receiver when it comes time to catch the ball, right? But one thing that he pointed out was the difference can be when it comes to receivers. When the ball comes out of his hands, the receiver now from that point is adjusting to the flight of the ball. So when you have more talent, you have better talented guys, they're able to adjust quicker, see, and put themselves in position to catch a pass that maybe other guys just can't or wouldn't. And that, when guys start talking about accuracy and stuff, that's why it can kind of be subjective depending on the type of talent that you are throwing to. And I think we see when guys make talented plays at the catch point, but really I never thought about when the ball leaves a hand, how, what's the receiver's ability to either kind of slow down or speed up or change his angle and make the quarterback right, even when the quarterback is wrong.
Right.
Great receivers. If you play at Alabama, you've had 4 receivers go in the top 15 in the last 2 years. They have the ability to do that. When you're playing at Wyoming, you're playing at North Dakota State, your receivers, you might not have guys that just do that more naturally. So that was one thing I kind of want to touch on when you start talking about the caliber of talent that you're playing with. I think it definitely makes a difference.
And it's not just Alabama too; it's Clemson too. Like T. Higgins is incredible at adjusting his body and to the ball. Like that helped Trevor Lawrence a lot. I would argue that Trevor Lawrence sophomore year there were some issues with his accuracy and placement, and T. Higgins is an incredible wide receiver. That helps. So I think they were all aided by it to an extent. And maybe Lance, if he had a guy that was like a T. Higgins or a Devontae Smith, or Jamar Chase, who's a true number one, like 50, top 20, top 30 overall pick at receiver, his accuracy might have looked a little bit different too.
I see someone, Jesus is my king. Hey, Jesus is my king as well. He said, I would love to meet Croc in person. Listen, I'll be trying to go to games this year. Talking about meeting up with some of my buddies in Detroit. I got some homies that are Lion fans. So we're going to fly out there. If you go to that game, you'll see me. Might end up going to the Philadelphia Eagles game. I'm pretty sure I'll be going to a game back in Cali. But I will be going to a home game, 49ers. I'll see what games everybody's going to. We'll meet up. We'll tailgate, all that good stuff, party the night before, whatever it is that y'all want to do. I'll make sure I kick it with everybody and we do that. Because at the end of the day, man, I'm a fan just like y'all. You know, I love football. Obviously, I play football, but I am a fan as well. We have some, and we'll start to get to some of these comments in the chat. His problem was the percentage of uncatchable balls that he threw, from my understanding. I'm assuming.
So
Go ahead.
So I'm charting it right now, and there is accuracy and placement issues. I'm not going to act like there isn't, but with the uncatchable balls, I kind of just found it as he's just a conservative decision maker. And a lot of the times I felt like he was just throwing that ball away. It didn't feel like to me he was trying to give his receiver a chance. Now, maybe I'm seeing it different, wrong, and the other people are seeing it right, but for the most part, on those super uncatchable balls, I just felt like on a deep ball, where the guy has a half a step instead of usually 2 or 3 steps when he throws the deep ball. Well, yeah, he puts it 5 yards in front because I think he looks at it as, I'm just going to put this where my receiver can get it or no one. And they're also up 21-0 in those games and all of that. So I don't know if it's just him naturally being conservative with his placement just because of that, or if it's because he's truly, truly, truly got these wild, wild accuracy highs and lows.
All right, so we've definitely touched on a lot of the quarterback position. If you have any more time, we can kind of get to maybe some of these other
Sure.
questions that 49er fans in here might have. I see a question here. Do you think Debo's workload will be reduced this year, meaning not used as a running back half the time? What do you think about that? And what do you kind of foresee them, doing with Debo now that maybe they have a guy who can throw more outside the number or maybe throw the ball down the field? Do you think they'll still continue to use him in the role that they have?
Yeah, I think so. He makes the job for the quarterback so much easier with what he does. And I think if Trey Lance or Jimmy Garoppolo plays, I think it's kind of a bailout for their offense to use him the way he does. Now, I think he is more dynamic as a wide receiver than he's been given credit for so far in his first 2 years. And I think as his chemistry with Trey Lance grows, we will see that a lot more. I mean, like Debo's kind of a freaky athlete in his own way. Like Croc, like Debo can beat like number one corners who run 4.4, 4.45, like straight down the sideline with speed on go routes and stuff. He's kind of freaky. And I think we'll see more stuff like that. But I still think Debo's role is going to be what it's been the last 2 years because they can win games single handedly with Debo Samuel. I mean, the last Rams game last year with Nick Mullins, they won that game because of Debo Samuel.
Yeah, and he didn't even catch a ball down the field. Oh, no, wait. You talking about
No.
the one in L.A.?
Yeah. I mean, both of those games, he
Yeah, both
literally
of them.
caught every ball. Yeah.
Yeah, he had big games in both games. One was, his work was a little bit more around the line of scrimmage. The other one, you're definitely right. I mean, he caught some slants at the end of the game and had nice yards after catch. He had some really good tough plays. Debo is a terrific football player. And I think, we'll see if they kind of expand on his role as a pure pass catcher. But I think part of having him, he just gives you that element of, the physicality that Kyle Shanahan is really looking for. I think he definitely gives you, the ability to be more versatile in your running game in the way they use him. You go back to the Super Bowl, I felt like he was averaging 20 yards a catch. 20 yards a touch in the run game. When they did need him in the passing game, they lined him up in the slot, third down, beat the guy off the line of scrimmage, caught a third down slant, drug guy for another 3 yards. So Debo, we look at him as this quote unquote gadget guy. There's definitely more to him than that, but we'll see if the 49ers kind of end up putting more on his plate as a pure receiver. I'm gonna say, Croc, you hear the Niners are looking to trade Deshaun Hamilton from the Broncos, but dude just tore his ACL training away from the Broncos. Oh my goodness. I didn't hear that he tore his ACL. That's tough. I just got the news yesterday that the Broncos were possibly looking to trade him away. They were actually going to waive him, and then they found out that they were actually going to waive him. And then teams were like, oh, no, we'll trade for him. So they had some suitors, and they were going to end up trading him. Didn't hear the 49ers were interested. But what I will say about Deshaun Hamilton, when you start talking about a slot receiver, pure route runner, thought he was terrific. I remember watching him at the Senior Bowl, killing guys, really liked his ability. When he went to the Broncos, I was like, damn, that's going to be a really good fit for him. Obviously, it hasn't worked out, and they've drafted a ton of receivers around him. But Hamilton really liked his ability. that's really tough to see him tear his ACL away from the Broncos facility. We'll see if he still ends up kind of getting some money because, I think everybody looks at these guys as if they have a whole bunch of money. Um, when you're a rookie, especially when you're not a high draft pick, you're really only making about 500,000 a year. I mean, like on the average, well, I'll say a little bit more than you're probably making 600,000 a year on average, probably. And even out of that 600,000, you get half of it. And then, that's not even including kind of your lifestyle, maybe if you're taking care of other people. So when you're on rookie contract still, you don't have a ton of money. So a guy like him who maybe, had made, a few $100,000 the previous year, you're not sure about his lifestyle, flying around, doing different things, seeing people, buying things, paying for his, recovery and his training and stuff like that, to tear his ACL and miss a whole year. And if they're not going to give him any money for that, that puts a guy like him in a very tough position. So prayers up to Deshaun Hamilton. I haven't heard the news that he tore his ACL yet, but again, I do appreciate the contribution for the super chat. Keep them coming, y'all. I like that. Here we go. Croc was awesome on the field. I remember he would do the Deion Sanders dance after an INT. I did do that. You guys ever want to see my highlights? I actually have them on this YouTube channel. They're just towards the bottom.
Did you high step?
So one of them, I got an interception and I did the dance, the little shuffle dance that he does. Another one, I didn't high step, but I held the ball up after an interception. I thought I was Deion, but I was nothing close to Deion. I couldn't sniff Deion's ability or natural athleticism. Definitely Deion, a lot more talented than I was. Let's continue getting to these comments, and I'll make sure I let you answer these. And I have something to say about this, but real quick, Vish, do you have anything to say about, Debo is best when his weight is down? I remember his sophomore year, he was a beast. What do you think about Debo Samuel and maybe his weight? I have some inside information on his weight and some of that, but what do you think just when you see his weight and how much he weighs and all that type of stuff?
I mean, I don't put like that much into his weight only because he to me just looks like a naturally big guy. Like they talked about his rookie year, how they took him running every single day. Him and Wes Welker used to run like some amount of, it was a long number of miles. It was a long distance run after practice and stuff. And Debo just wouldn't lose weight. And I think he's just a naturally big guy. I think he's just a naturally powerful guy. And I think in terms of his weight, I think the only reason his weight's a problem is because he's such a freak. Like he has unbelievable movement ability for his weight, and I think that's what it's like. It's like Zion Williamson in a football much smaller scale, where he's just such a big guy, but big guys like him aren't supposed to be that sudden and that explosive and that just like explosively powerful and stuff. So I think that's the only problem. But I think people overblow it as if like he can just get his body down to 205 and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I did have a buddy that was on the South Carolina training staff. I actually was on the Jets with this guy, so he'd always feed me information about the South Carolina guys. Obviously, 49ers have drafted a couple of those guys, and he kind of gave me information on Brian Edwards. One thing that he did say about Debo Samuel coming out was he is a guy that his weight can go up when he's not really working out. There are some guys that get skinnier. I'm one of those guys. I'll get like skinnier back in my playing days if I wasn't working out. Debo is the opposite way. He will get heavier. And I think that a lot of his injuries kind of maybe were a result of his weight last year. People, they start talking about Debo Samuel and, he just got to stay healthy. Got to stay healthy. He was fairly healthy as a rookie. Obviously he had some things in college, but as a rookie, he missed one game out of the 19 that the 49ers played. So in that one game he missed, maybe was more due to the poor conditions playing against the Washington football team in the storm. So it was like, okay, he didn't play in that game. But outside that, Debo didn't miss a game. The injuries for the 49ers didn't really start to compile until he broke his foot. Once he broke his foot and he was going to miss time, during the year, that was going to take away from his preparation for the season, his ability to get in the best shape that he possibly could. And then from that standpoint, he came back early, hamstring, came back again, hamstring. I think a lot of those were a result directly from the foot. I do think that the foot happened because he possibly was overweight at the time of him working out. So maybe he can really work to kind of get his weight down before he starts doing all the different things and pressuring and all that on his foot. Maybe that's something that he can really work on. But I think overall, when you look at Debo Samuel, I think he would probably be best at around 212 to 215, but he's definitely not a person that can, get down to 205. He doesn't really have that body.
Right.
Even if you look at him now, he's pretty much as lean as he can be for who he is. So
Hmm.
I wouldn't expect him to really, lose too much more weight.
I have a question about that though.
Yeah,
You
go
said
ahead.
that you think the foot injury happened because of his weight. Prior to that foot injury though, before he went to like Nashville and doing all the training and he broke his foot there, he was training with Trent Williams and Jet McKinnon down in Texas, and Trent Williams was talking about how hard they were working and how Debo looked freaky and all of that. Like it seemed like Debo was on his way to just being in unbelievable shape before he broke his foot. Or and do you think I'm reading too much into it, or do you think
No, I mean and I know he was out there working with Footwork King out in Houston, Texas as well. So Footwork, I don't know how much I'm able to say, but yeah, he hurt himself. So let's get to the next question. All right. Some people tell me things and they tell me things in confidence. I
right,
don't know how
right.
much I can say. But what do you guys think about the McNabb for Lance comparison? I will say, and I'll let you answer this as well. I do think one thing that people are forgetting about McNabb, I saw someone say that Lance is much more athletic than McNabb. But I would say McNabb was a basketball player as well at Syracuse. Now, I want to say he might have played
Totally.
like 3 years basketball at Syracuse. He was a hooper as well as a quarterback on the football team. So that's one thing to kind of keep in consideration when we're talking about at least their athletic ability. But what do you think as far as their play styles, them as a comparison? Do you think you see any similarities with their game?
I mean, Donovan McNabb takes me back because that was like when I was a kid, and it's not like I've ever gone back to trying to watch Donovan McNabb because like he was like a really good player, but he wasn't one of those players that you just want to go back and watch. So
Yeah.
it's I'm gonna have to really search my brain. It could be a good comp, but I don't think I'm the best equipped to answer this one.
All right. All right. Any more questions, y'all? We're over here. We are approaching 1 hour, and Vish has definitely been generous with his time. I kind of reached out to him thinking we would talk for about 15, 20 minutes, on Josh Allen and Trey Lance comparisons. And here we are approaching an hour. So,
Bro, this is
yeah.
awesome. Thank you for having me. But I will say I thought there was one really good question that I wanted to get your thoughts on.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know where it was, but basically it was a question. Oh, right here from Raymond Martinez. He's asking which games on the 49ers schedule will be surprisingly tough that may be getting downplayed.
Mm. I haven't heard how people are talking about games overall. But I will say kind of some games that kind of jump out to me. I think the first thing when you start talking about kind of big opponents that are kind of, I don't want to say like, the obvious, right? We know like, the divisional games between the Cardinals,
Mm-hmm.
Rams, Seahawks, those are going to be very competitive. But there is an early game where I'm looking at it, I'm like, who? The Colts game. Now, the good
Yeah.
thing is 49ers have a bye week before the Colts game, but I look at that game as one that should be extremely competitive. When you look at, how they are built, they are a physical team up front. They have a good running game with Jonathan Taylor, who I think is just in his
Mm-hmm.
stride. They got a athletic, big arm quarterback in Carson Wentz. If he can kind of get back to how he was playing before last year, which was terrible, and it seems like a lot of people they look at him as if that's him. And I'm like, no, like that's the worst we've ever seen from Carson Wentz. He was good before then, all right? And he got bad for whatever reasons. And, you hear about his teammates not liking him. Those could be reasons, whatever. His work ethic might be bad. But as far as his ability and his ability to win games and be a really good quarterback, was considered really a top 7 quarterback at one time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the Colts find that. So you start looking at him and Pittman and those guys, and still have T.Y. Hilton, who's a terrific veteran, and that defense that they had that was terrific last year, led by DeForest Buckner. That is one of the more scarier games in the first half of the season, in my opinion. So I don't know if people are kind of downplaying that game, but that's definitely one where I think it could be a really tough one.
I agree with that. I actually think that game will be a loss just because I think in terms of all-around talent, the Colts are right there with the 49ers in terms of their entire roster being filled with good players. But I'm going to go a little unorthodox here, and I'm going to say week one, Detroit. Everyone thinks that the Niners are just going to steamroll Detroit week one, but I actually think it's going to be a really ugly game that the Niners end up winning. The first thing first is I think Detroit's offensive line is excellent, especially now that you add Penei Sewell. I think Frank Ragnow is a top 5 center in the NFL. And I think Taylor Decker is one of the most underrated tackles in the NFL. He's top 5 to 7 left tackle in the NFL. He's really, really good. And, there's a lot on the Niners D line, especially. That'll be like Nick Bosa's first game back and stuff. So I expect that there to be some rust there. And we know Jared Goff can sometimes throw really well when he's protected, and he's going to be protected next year. I thought DeAndre Swift showed a lot. But the bigger reason is just because I think that the Niners are just under Kyle Shanahan, they're a very, very slow starting team. And so I did something earlier this week. I'm on summer break. I have time to do this, where I looked back at Kyle Shanahan's offensive production his last 13 seasons. So the 13 seasons he's been an offensive coordinator and a head coach. And you know what they average points per game on week one?
Okay, hold on. Let me see. And are we talking about just the offense? Because I know the Tampa Bay game.
Just the offense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it, I'd say because that Panthers game, they didn't really score 10.
It's 19. He averages in his career running an offense 19 points
in his
per game
career.
Week one.
My bad.
Yes.
I was thinking with the
all
Niners,
13
and I bet it's
not
even
just
lower.
With the Niners. It's bad with the Niners because he had 3 versus Carolina and 16 versus Minnesota, but it's only 19 points per game. Even MVP Matt Ryan, their offense started slow. They against the 23rd ranked Bucs defense, they scored 24 points, which was 10 less than their season average that year. So they're just a slow starting offense. They don't play very well week one for whatever reason under Kyle Shanahan. It's the weirdest phenomenon I've seen because other offensive coaches of his caliber, like Sean McVay and Andy Reid and Josh McDaniels, week one, they come out and they unload the bag, whatever they've been doing this offseason. But with Kyle, it's like I feel like week two is always the week that his offense, like the Jets game, right? They just came in and obliterated them. The Bengals game, they came in and just destroyed them. Week two is where he really, really gets in his bag. But for whatever reason, they have this weird thing where the run game doesn't really work week one. He's had one really amazing week one in his career, and that was RG3's first start in the Superdome when they put on a show and put 40 on the Saints. But otherwise, for whatever reason, his offensives have struggled week one. I don't expect much to change regardless of who's under center. So I think Detroit, even though, yes, Jared Goff, not a good quarterback, it's just going to be a very, very ugly, grinded out type game. And it's not because I expect Detroit to be a good football team and the 49ers to be a bad one. It's just week one.
Yeah. I know people when they think of Jared Goff, and it's like they kind of view him as this really bad, terrible quarterback. I don't think he's bad. I don't think he's terrible. I think he's very average. And, I've kind of compared him and I look at him and Jimmy Garoppolo and kind of put them on the same playing field where, they are system quarterbacks in the sense of they kind of play the same. They need the system more than the system needs them. They aren't going to do anything to really seriously take the team over the top, but put in an advantageous situation, they can definitely play well. I will say, I like the 49ers defense against the Lions offense since losing Marvin Jones, not having Galladay. It looks like their best receiver is Brashard Perryman. They drafted St. Brown. Maybe he can do something for them. They don't really have that running game like that. I like Swift, but I like Swift a lot actually. But I would say the 49ers will be the better team on the field. Now it's just, can the 49ers offense do something that they haven't done week one, and that's hit the ground running. I think that's a terrific point.
The other thing, week one, I think, is just a little bit more of a crapshoot, right? Like last year, the Jacksonville Jaguars beat the Colts week one, and they won only one game last season. Colts week one. So I just think because of that, like, how many times have we looked at week one and we go, oh my God? Like, do you remember Colin Kaepernick's 412-yard passing performance
against Packers,
against Green Bay? Everybody looked at that week one and said, oh my God, it's over. Look at Cap. And then you go to week two, and that Seattle defense just shut up the 49ers on Sunday Night Football. They dominated them. So like I feel like week one is just a really weird thing where just weird things happen in the NFL. And the Lions, a team with Dan Campbell, who seems like he's going to have that team over enthused to play and all of that. They might not be a good team. I don't expect them to be a good team next year, but given their physicality with their offensive line, Anthony Lynn's a good run game coordinator. They could have a little bit of something and maybe take the Niners like down to the wire, make it a tougher game than it should be.
Definitely, definitely. I can see that happening. Jagger, thanks for the contributions. Good to see Croc and Vish. I know I'm gonna have Vish on. I'm gonna have to get him on more often, man. Like this insight has been awesome. I love that you kind of point out some things I wasn't thinking about. How many points Kyle Shanahan puts up, per game week one. I think that's something that's very important when you talk to not only week one against the Lions, but week one against the Lions on the road, 10 a.m. start time for a West Coast team. I think those are things that are really kind of, important to take into consideration. Let's get it. Let's see. We got a couple more questions for you, Vish. Let's see. Probably whoever wants to reach out. Running back core. Why did you draft? Wait, what?
Wait, Croc, real quick question. Is Marquise Lee on the 49ers?
No, I don't think so. Somebody said that.
Matt Barrows tweeted that Trey Lance's best throw of the day was a bullet to Marquise Lee.
Huh. Well, that is interesting. So real quick before we get into Marquise Lee, Marquise Lee coming out of USC, not coming out, I'd say maybe when he was a sophomore. He was so he's trying out right now. And you can have veterans trying out during minicamp. So that's not something that is out of ordinary. I remember when I was with the New York Jets, there were guys that were 5-6 year veterans playing in rookie minicamp. So it says rookie minicamp, but you can have your second year guys out there as well. If you want to get more reps for them, you also can have guys that want to try out. But Marquise Lee, when he was coming out of USC, dude was a baller. He was a baller. And then in that last year, was junior year or whatever, tore his knee up. And I felt like after that, Marquise Lee kind of wasn't the same. And then he dealt with injuries in the NFL. At one point for the Jags, he had almost 1,000 yards in 1 year. But Marquise Lee was somebody that was extremely talented. But that injury that last year at USC, I think that kind of messed him up heading into the NFL. And it felt like he just kind of wasn't the same after that. Got another contribution, man. You guys have been awesome. I love having this on now. Croc, were you a trash talker as a DB? And if so, how would you have handled playing against Steve Smith Jr.? I think it's Steve Smith Sr. But I definitely was a trash talker. So much so that I did not wear a mouthpiece because I wanted to be able to talk trash in games to people without having to take my mouthpiece out every time. So you can't find a picture with me anywhere on me. Not like I have a whole bunch of pictures of me, but any picture you do see of me on Google or whatever, you will never see a mouthpiece in my mouth. And that, whether it's practice, whether it's the games or whatever, because I always wanted to be able to talk trash.
Like Jalen Ramsey?
Yeah, he wears a mouthpiece, but he hangs it.
Right, he never wears it, yeah.
He doesn't wear it. So I definitely was a trash. Now, when it comes to Steve Smith, you got to bring your lunch when it comes to him, because that's a big dog at receiver. And physically imposing guy. He's definitely going to do things to try to get underneath your skin. I watched what he did to Richard Sherman, if you guys remember that, where Richard Sherman kind of turned around and he like picked Richard Sherman up off the ground and slammed him on the ground. Yeah, he did Richard Sherman kind of dirty. That video is out there. It was like a block or whatever. So, I mean, we're talking about somebody who is the aggressor of all the aggressives. All right. Steve Smith, he's definitely a big dog, and that's one guy I would not want to mess with. And I ain't never back down from nobody, but he's a big dog. So all right, Marquise Lee. Somebody said that was I think I saw it. Matt Barrow said that was his best throw. That was the best throw of the day for Trey Lance. That's good. I can't wait to hear everything that's coming out from rookie minicamp. Got 200 of y'all in here, man. 200 of you guys in here. I really appreciate it. Vish, I appreciate you coming in. Everybody that contributed to the super chat. This is my first time being able to have that, and I thought that was awesome. I appreciate all you guys that contributed to that. Moving forward, I'm not sure how many 49er videos specifically I would do on here. We are actually starting a Striking Gold YouTube page, so we'll definitely get that going. This one will be more wide receiver, defensive back based, and if that happens to be a 49 player, definitely get on. But I'm keeping it rocking right now until I do the whole rebrand thing. Vish, I want to thank you for your time. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, Croc. It was my pleasure.
All right, all right. I appreciate you guys. While I'm in here, Vish, if you want, you can check out anybody else. If you guys have questions, feel free to come in. If you want to come on live and ask questions, because I have plenty of free time right now. It's Friday and I ain't got nothing else to do. Vish, again, you can check out at any point if you want
Sure.
to. The link is there in the comments now, so y'all can come on. You guys can come on. You guys can talk. You guys have questions. Feel free. Click the link. Come in. All right. Yeah, my guy Chris, describe what y'all expect from the DBs. You know what, Chris? I appreciate the contribution. You know we talk every day, but that's actually a great question. The defensive backfield isn't like big name guys. I think they are guys that do their job right. They're not kind of overall these playmaker guys or the flashy names or anything like that. But one thing I will say that will help, and you can talk about what you can give your response to this after this, but I think the defensive line, I think you can get by with an average secondary. And I think that's maybe what the 49ers are right now. I think they are more of an average secondary. But I think when you look at, what 49ers have on the defensive line, I think that's where Niners are going to kind of make their money and really help the secondary. What do you think about the secondary as a whole?
So I'm bullish on the 5 guys that are scheduled to be starters if they're healthy. Like I think all of them are actually borderline excellent players at their positions. When you go Ward, Tart, K'Wan Williams, Jason Verrett, and then Mosley's the one guy I would say, but I think he's a capable starter within this defense, especially if he's your weakest player within the secondary because the other 4 are good. My big question is about the health because all 5 of them or all 4 of the 5 basically have had some issues where unfortunately they keep getting hurt. But as long as they're healthy, when you add in the pass rush and then you have Fred Warner in the middle of your defense, I think the DBs can surprise people in terms of how good they can play. Like Verrett played really well last year. Jimmy Ward and Tart are exceptionally versatile and really good players at doing a variety of different things. And so I think it can be better than what people expect. The big problem is health, and that's scary.
Yeah, definitely scary with their injury histories. Here, someone says, I think Thomas could take Mosley's job. I'll say this: Mosley is definitely not going to be someone who goes down without a fight. He knows the system. He's an extremely smart and aggressive player. I think he's somebody who definitely believes in his capabilities, and he's shown that he can play at a starting level. I do think the 49ers kind of showed a little bit of what they think about Mosley late last year when they elected to play Witherspoon over him on the outside and also play Dante Johnson over him in the slot. So I'm not sure exactly how much confidence they have in Mosley, but I'm pretty sure heading into camp, he will be the starter. There will be a learning curve for a guy like Thomas. Sounds like he's anxious to learn and wants to be that guy that's like, hey, just put me anywhere and I'm willing to, go to battle there. He's definitely a guy who's going to, battle out there. I really love Thomas's attitude and his approach to the game and his preparation. So we'll really see, kind of where that goes. What are your thoughts on Thomas eventually maybe taking Mosley's job?
I don't know. I don't know if he does it this year. To be full disclosure, I've not watched much, if at all, of Ambry Thomas. My thing is just that a guy that was out last year, it might take him a year just to get his feet wet. So I don't expect him to beat out Emmanuel Mosley. And then I have a follow-up question in terms of I always read into Johnson and Witherspoon playing last year as more like Mosley's body wasn't right yet. Right? If you remember, he had a kind of nasty concussion that he was out for 2-3 weeks with, and then he came back. I always looked at it as they were basically activating him because they needed him to be activated in an emergency role, but they didn't want to risk his health out on the field.
But they played him on special teams. So that was my thing. When I saw him, I saw him running down on special teams. I didn't even know he had suited up. And then I saw him on special teams. I'm like, wait a minute, that's 41. He's number 4 now. Changed his number to number 4. But when I saw him on special teams, that's not something where it's like, oh, we just want to kind of take it easy on this guy because he's possibly returning from an injury. To me, that kind of shows that, again, and maybe I'm looking too far into it, but I think he really has to kind of prove that he's going to be the starter. And I think even his kind of reworked contract of kind of how they
Yeah,
structured the whole thing, I really think that's really more of a 1 year type thing. And I think and it's not any type of big time money. And I think he was willing to take that because this is a situation where he has to kind of bet on himself. And I like his ability. I like who he is. We'll see if he kind of, is kind of able to, overcome that. We got Symmetry 7. I appreciate the contributions big time. You guys have been very generous today. How many CBs do you see making the final 53, and who do you think those names will be? Vish, I'll let you answer that first.
that's a tough question. Let me pull up the roster real quick, but I think Verrett, Mosley, and Ambry Thomas are guarantees. Kwan Williams will be the fourth. I think he makes it. And then I think Diamador Lenore also is kind of um like guaranteed to make it, being a fifth round pick. In terms of, do you think they'll keep a six DB? I personally think they're going to only keep five corners, and I think Dante Johnson will once again make the practice squad.
So are they? And I don't know if they talked about this yet. Are they going to continue to do what they did last time with the practice squad, where you were able to have veterans? Because I thought that was brilliant, and I know it was because of COVID, but I thought that was really like brilliant to where you're able to kind of keep a veteran guy around, keep him on practice squad. Obviously, he doesn't make as much money, but it's like, hey, you're there,
Yeah,
and you can kind of use them in the pinch.
I think that's a new like thing league wide. I think
Uh,
that's one of those things that they're just going to keep maybe from now on. Like, it was one of the good things that came from the COVID.
Yeah. All right. So as far as who I think they'll keep, 53-man roster with the cornerbacks, off the top of my head, I would say, obviously Verrett, Mosley, and Thomas. Anytime you're a third round pick, unless you're just trash and can't play at all, you're going to be out there. And then I know we kind of forget about Kwan Williams, but because he's a pure slot guy, but definitely he's going to make it as well. So that's four. And then it starts to get tight. Are they going to keep five? Or are they going to keep six? 49ers definitely have a lot of versatile pieces in the secondary, guys that can play more positions. I think that definitely opens up, an opportunity for Lenore, who was, drafted, but where he was drafted, there's no guarantees that he'll make it. But I would assume that he's somebody who, unless, again, he just bombs it and just can't play, I'd assume that he's going to make it as well. So, and then after that, I would say, yeah, Dante Johnson, definitely. There are guys that have been on the team. Tim Harris. 49ers still have Tim Harris, right?
Yes, they do.
So he's somebody, we'll see. He's been around, practice squad, inactive, IR, all those things. I think he was active a little bit last year. We'll see if he's somebody that can kind of, potentially take that next step. My guy Chris again with the contribution. Okay. I need like a soundboard or something where I can make noises every time somebody gives contributions. Man, I appreciate that. Describe your favorite defense or offensive play, meaning pick an offensive, defensive play you like to see coaches call. Croc pick defense. So is there a specific play that you like to see called? We'll start with you, Vish, on offense. Something that maybe Kyle
Yeah.
dials up.
Yeah, my favorite concept he dials up is arches, which, funnily enough, is the play that Jimmy Garoppolo misses George Kittle on 3rd and 5 in the Super Bowl and throws it to Kendrick Bourne. But he dials it up quite a bit, and it's very effective. It's probably my favorite concept that he calls. But I'm still getting into the weeds of learning his concepts right now. Like, I'm still learning drift. I'm still trying. I mean, he dials up the Mills concept versus cover 4 quite a bit, but
Mills is a
I
good
would
one.
say arches is my favorite.
And if anybody wants to know, he talked about Mills just now. One specific time that I'm pretty sure all of you will remember when the Mills concept was called.
Sanders in the Super
Good.
Bowl.
Well, Sanders, but I was going to say Goodwin. When Goodwin had that like 80-yard touchdown catch or
Oh,
whatever,
right.
that ball from C.J. Beathard, it was the day that he had found out, or the morning, he had found out about his child, losing his child, and he still played in the game. But the Mills concept is a kind of a cover 4 beater where you have a deep post on the outside, and then you have a route by the slot that's going to hold up the secondary. So, I mean, the safety. So is kind of designed to where you have an outside shaded corner, right? And he's responsible for his quarters. You have a two high safety that's responsible for his quarters. And then that when that receiver in the slot pushes up at that safety, he can either hook it up or run a dig. That pulls that safety, and then that outside shaded corner on the post is in bad position if the quarterback just has a strong enough arm to throw the ball away from the defensive back, especially if you have a speedster like a Marquise Goodwin. That's really a recipe for success as far as that concept goes. And it was made popular from Mills. Was it Ernie Mills? Mills, the receiver. I want to say he played for Sam Mills. He played for like the Panthers.
Sam Mills was the linebacker.
Okay, so not Sam Mills, but the Mills
Sam Mills
that played.
is the former Saints linebacker.
Okay, so what Mills
Ernie
was it?
Mills is the receiver.
Okay, so it's probably Ernie Mills.
Yeah,
And
Sam Mills is the linebacker with like Ricky Jackson and Pat Swilling that Vic Fangio coached for the Saints, and I think they were in the 80s or the early 90s.
All right, it's definitely not Jalen Mills. It's definitely not Jalen Mills. He's the defensive back uh
New
for
England.
New England. No, well, yeah, now New England, but a long time Eagles defensive back. Here we go. Hold on. So Lenore picked off Trey during rookie minicamp. That's good for Lenore because he's somebody who, I mean, obviously not great for Trey Lance, but it's good for Lenore because obviously he's somebody who I want to see kind of make this team. I actually did a breakdown on him on my Patreon account, patreon.com/Krog Talk. I have a full breakdown on Lenore and some of his games from this past year, as well as previous games, kind of some of his strengths and weaknesses and what type of defensive back he is. For Trey Lance, I think it's good because every throw that he makes right now, whether it's good or bad, is him gaining reps, no matter how you look at it. So the more reps he gets, the more comfortable he's going to get. The more he's going to understand what he can and can't do, especially at this high of a level where, he didn't play against guys like even like Lenore, who started at Oregon. He's like a 3-year starter at Oregon. That's not the type of guys that Trey Lance is used to playing against. So I think, any rep, whether it's a good play or bad, it's useful. Richie, thanks for the contribution. I really appreciate it. Let's go. All right. Do you think Hufunga, I'm not even going to try to say his first name, if added 10 to 15 pounds, can move to linebacker, play with Fred Warner? I watched a lot of his tape, Hufunga, but I haven't watched a lot of his tape, but he seems like a little stiff, but he is aggressive. And, I would say, and this is the question that Richie asked, or Rashi asked, I will say he's not big. When you watch him play, he looks big. Like, he doesn't look like somebody that's 200 pounds. He looks bigger than that. He's like a 215 type guy. I think even then to kind of play with Fred Warner, because when you start talking about Fred Warner is 6'4", like 240 pounds. Like he is big. He is a big dude. So Funga would have to gain a lot of weight to kind of play that type of role. You do see some guys that are like, 225 to 230 pound linebackers. You're kind of starting to see a little bit more of that in the NFL. Can he get to even being that type of guy? We're still talking about 25 to 30 pounds that he'd have to add, and you likely not want to see him lose any of the athleticism. And he's already somebody who's not a top tier athlete, right? He's somebody who ran a 4.6 at his pro day, not even, a combine 4.6. So he's someone who we'll see how much he can kind of, potentially grow into his body, become more athletic. But I think the way he's going to win is probably more so like a Richard Sherman, where he's probably going to have to win a little bit more with his mind, be able to anticipate, and maybe, be a guy like who he trained with. He trained with Troy Polamalu. I'm not saying he's going to be Troy Polamalu, but I'm just saying in the sense of being ahead of everything mentally. If he can be that type of guy, then, there's some type of success. But I think right now he's talked about wanting to be a really good special teamer. I think that's where he's going to probably make his niche in the NFL until he really gets an opportunity. What about you? What do you think, Vish?
Do you think he could be a dime linebacker, like what they did with Marcel Harris last year when they brought?
Yeah. I mean, I could possibly see that, but even Marcel Harris, I really like Marcel Harris as a pure cover guy. He's good.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, like on the mental side of things, I think he kind of on the mental side of things with Harris, maybe he can have some lapses there. But from just a pure ability standpoint, Marcel Harris is someone who plays a little bit faster, and also I think his just pure coverage skills. I watched him play. I watched him in off man coverage against Michael Thomas. Be able to play off him, and he had good feet, broke on the ball extremely well. It wasn't thrown, but when you see that type of stuff from him, it's like it's a little different. So we'll see what if Hufanga could do that. I got Chris, my guy, who watches a ton of USC film, says Hufanga is definitely not stiff, in my opinion. So I didn't see stiffness from him. I thought he was, fine as far as his movement ability. He's just, on paper, not the most athletic guy. And I think even Chris would tell you he struggled a little bit in his, kind of coverage and stuff like that in previous years. Had a really strong 2020 year. 49ers were going to trade for Hamilton before he tore his ACL. So is this news? Is this news that broke today? Because I haven't been on Twitter much today.
I
So
also haven't. I haven't been on Twitter all day, so I haven't really seen it. But it makes sense if they were trying to trade for him. Though I'll ask you this, Croc: how much better is Hamilton, in your opinion, than say Travis Benjamin?
Ooh, I think it's kind of tough because you see what Travis Benjamin is now, who is more of kind of just a deep threat type guy and really kind of resorted more special teamer niche type player.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't been very productive. I think in theory, Travis Benjamin is a good deep ball threat, but I don't know if that's what Benjamin is today. So as far as Hamilton, I mean, prior to an ACL injury, I know what he is. He's a terrific route runner, good intermediate type guy. I think he kind of got washed out of Denver with them, drafting Hamler, drafting Judy, having Sutton, and just too many guys that kind of do work in similar areas. So
Mm-hmm.
I see right here, Coach. He says Hamilton who, and we're talking about Deshaun Hamilton. He was at Penn State, number 5 a few years back. I want to say he was the same draft as Dante Pettis. He was with the Broncos, and they were looking to trade him. All right, so dude, we've been on here for an hour 21 minutes. I think
Yeah, we
we
have.
are. I think we'll get off now. Vish, I appreciate we got almost 200 people in here right now. Vish, I appreciate you for your time. Everybody, I appreciate you guys coming in here. I appreciate the contributions. That was great, awesome, especially for my first experience having these. Definitely going to have to go live more often. Maybe I'll devote one day per week to kind of going live for 49er fans. I think either later tonight or sometime tomorrow, and I'll put it out there. I'll go live, and I was talking to Vish. I kind of saw how to do the screen share. I feel like I'm on like all these electronics all day, but I'm still like an old school guy in the sense of I'm like, okay, so this is how you screen share. And I was able to share my screen with him. If so, either tonight or tomorrow, I'll go live. We'll watch some Ambry Thomas since I've had so many people ask questions about him. We'll go in depth in his film while he was at Michigan. I want to definitely do more stuff like that. So again, I appreciate you guys. We're going to check out Vish. Thank you. Can you let everybody know where they can find you?
Yeah, you can just find me on Blake and Vish Sports. We will actually be going live in another hour and 20 minutes, and we will be ranking our top 5 running backs in the NFL. And we will also be predicting our early predictions on the 49ers running back depth chart. So if you're interested, tune in about an hour, 20 minutes. Croc, once again, thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
All right, everybody. I'm out. See y'all next time. Peace.